Welcome to Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. I'm Melly, and this is the podcast for people who are determined to find a glimmer of hope even while the fires of life are burning around them. Together, we'll dumpster dive through all sorts of topics like divorce, dating, friendships, grief, career ups and downs, and so much more. All with a sense of humor and absolutely no toxic positivity. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. Today's episode is Scribbles, Silliness, and the Science of Self-Expression. And the whole purpose of today's episode is to talk about the idea that creativity, just for the sake of creativity, is worth your time. And while I completely would say that it is not a good idea to waste time all the time, our fear of wasting time can actually lead us to less expression, which then adds to our stress. And I don't know about you, but the last thing I need is more stress in my life. So today we're going to talk about why many people feel pressure to be productive all the time, which leaves little room for creativity, self-expression, or even just doing things for fun. We'll spend some time exploring why expression matters and how productivity culture gets in the way of that. And we'll also touch on how neuroscience backs up the idea that we need creative outlets. If you're ready, let's get started. So let's talk about what I like to call the productivity trap, why we're so afraid of wasting time. And let's start by talking about something that I know I personally struggle with, so I'm assuming there are others listening who do as well. But this idea that every second of my day has to be productive. Like, I can't just sit down and doodle in a notebook for fun. I have this sense that I need to be learning something, accomplishing something, or heaven forbid, monetizing something. Because apparently in 2025, you can't just like doing something for the sake of doing it. You have to turn it into a side hustle. And I am the queen of the side hustle. I honestly, when I pick up a new hobby, it is so hard for me to not try to monetize it. That's just kind of part of who I am. But it isn't serving me in the way that you might think it would. So tell me I'm not alone in this. Have you ever picked up a hobby, could be painting, baking, playing the ukulele, and within 10 minutes, your brain's like, hey, you know what would be even better? What if we turned this into a full-time business and we started marketing it on Instagram? And then all of a sudden, you're looking up domain names, you're setting up, Squarespace websites, you're on Zazzle buying all of the swag. Please tell me I'm not the only one who does this. But it's like all you really wanted to do was maybe knit a scarf, not start some big empire. And I'll be honest, I think one of the reasons this is such a big thing for me is that, I do have ADHD, which makes it really hard for me to just do something for fun, just for the sake of doing it. When I go into something, I either do it at 110% or I don't do it at all. And I'm working on that, and I know that I can because of this little thing called neuroplasticity in the brain, which means that my brain can change, and I will do a whole episode on that coming up here in the next months. But for right now, it is what it is. And that's why I have tried to monetize things like jewelry making. I actually did pretty well with that one for a while, I'm not going to lie. But knitting, crocheting, photography, acting, music, you get it. If I enjoy doing it, I am going to try to find a way to make money at it. And all of these things can be monetized, but they don't all need to be monetized by one person, right? But that's kind of the world we live in right now. We feel guilty for doing what we deem nothing. And by nothing, it's not like I'm saying we're just sitting around, but maybe I'm making a necklace purely for the joy of making it. We can start to feel guilty because of this cultural pressure and the productivity culture we live in. I'm sure you've heard the term hustle culture. And this, hustle culture tells us that if we're not grinding, we are falling behind. Productivity has become a virtue. And rest? Well, rest is for the weak. So if you sit down to do something just simply for the joy of it, with no goal, no profit to be made, no clear achievement on the horizon, you will almost feel like you're doing something wrong. It's like fun has become the ultimate F word. Don't do something just for fun. And let's be real. Sometimes we do set out to do something for fun. We'll decide, you know what, I need to just be creative for the sake of being creative, or, I'm going to rest and do something restorative for myself. But then we'll do something like map it out completely, like, okay, I have exactly 45 minutes to unwind. Should I read a book? Should I do a guided meditation? Should I write in my gratitude journal? Oh no, I forgot to schedule my relaxation time in my planner, and now I'm behind on my rest schedule. Like, what is that, right? So let's talk a little bit about the neuroscience of why we struggle to just be. Here's the whole sciencey part. Our brains are wired to seek dopamine. It's the chemical that makes us feel rewarded. We get it when we do things like riding a roller coaster, trying something new, working out. But we also get it for things like checking off a to-do list, hitting a work goal, or from getting external validation from likes and comments. Problem is, as we continue to do these things, we'll get less and less dopamine each time because we adapt. So if we don't change up the way we're doing something or whatever, it's called hedonic adaptation, and we'll get just a little less dopamine each and every time, which eventually will leave us feeling depleted if we don't change our routine, and this will have a negative effect on our joy. Now, when it comes to something like the dopamine that we get from working out, we can just change up our routine. Or maybe it's, the dopamine we get from going on a roller coaster. Well, we can go on a different roller coaster. But what about the dopamine that we get from likes and comments on social media? We can't control how many people are going to like our latest reel, right? So we will try harder, and then when it doesn't pan out, we will feel lower, and this hijacks our creativity. Because creativity does not work like that. The best ideas, the most joyful moments, they come from times of play, from doing things just because they light you up. But if your brain is conditioned to expect an instant reward, like praise or money or having this finished product in hand, it's going to resist things that don't offer a clear, immediate win. And this is why so many of us struggle to do things just for fun. Our poor brains are like, wait, where's my gold star? Where's my paycheck? Who's going to validate me for this? No one? Well, then why are we even doing it? But here's the thing, if we don't make time for expression, we will often end up having a stress response to that suppression of creativity. When we ignore creative expression, when we constantly push it aside in favor of being productive, it actually increases our stress. So studies show that suppressing creativity raises your cortisol levels, and cortisol is the stress hormone. And if you know anything about having high cortisol levels, you'll know that this is a total brain killer. It's the reason why you can't sleep at night and a whole host of other issues. But guess what one of the things is that will help you reduce cortisol? Yep, doing things just for fun, for joy, for no reason at all. And look, even if we zoom out beyond the science, understand this. God didn't design us just to work all the time. There's a reason that humans have created art, music, and storytelling since the beginning of time. It's actually in our DNA. The Bible is full of examples of people praising, creating, and celebrating, not because it was the productive thing to do, but because it was just simply part of who they were. I mean, think about it. God himself is creative. God created an entire universe filled with galaxies and sunsets and these amazing, gorgeous, beautiful colors that did not need to exist. He could have just given us some kind of grayscale functional world, right? But instead, he gave us beauty and variety and ways to express ourselves. So why do we think we have to earn the right to be creative when God literally made the world we live in such a creative way? So take this as your permission the next time that you want to sit down to write, paint, or maybe you want to dance or sing in the shower or just have fun and you feel guilty about it. Take this as your sign that you should not feel guilty about it. This is your permission slip to stop overthinking it. Your creativity does not need a business plan. Your hobbies don't need to be optimized. And I say this as much to myself as to any of you. You don't need to deserve joy. It's part of who you are. and your brain will thank you for giving it a break from all the pressure. And let me also just say, I feel like I need the disclaimer here. I'm not saying that you should never monetize your hobbies, because if you can actually make a living doing something you love, yay, right? That's exactly what you should do. What I mean is that every single hobby you have doesn't need to be monetized. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about how we can start reclaiming expression and creativity in our everyday lives, even when it feels impossible. And here's a spoiler alert: you don't actually have to be good at whatever it is that you're trying to do for it to matter. Let's talk a little bit now about self-judgment and fear of imperfection, this kind of pressure to perform, how expectations can actually stifle creativity. A lot of times, people will stop themselves from, having some kind of creative expression or outlet because they fear they're not good enough. Someone might think, I can't dance well, I'm going to look stupid if I try to do that, or I can't write because I'm not actually a real author. And this perfectionism actually paralyzes your creativity. It not only keeps you from starting, which is bad enough, but it will actually take away the joy that you would have in doing it. So I know it's hard to just get over your fears of things, but try to let yourself just do something for the sake of it. And one way you can do that is to actually purposely do something that you've not done before, so you know you're going to be bad at it. I know I shared about this on another episode, but I took a weaving class, which some listeners are probably like, oh, wow, cool. And some are probably like, that sounds boring. And that's okay. It was fun for me. But I was not good at it at first. There was a lot to learn, and I had to figure out how to, get the loom all set up and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to be good at this. And there was a part of me that wanted to just give up in the moment. But I didn't. I kept pressing on, ended up learning how to do it. And even though I'm still not good at it, it is something that I find enjoyable. So let's talk about now a neuroscience angle to all this. I want to tell you about one of the coolest things that is happening in your brain when you're being creative. So a little bit of background, there is this theory that we have 3 systems that our brain operates in. They are called System 1, System 2, and the default mode network. And that is the one that I want to tell you a little bit more about today. So the default mode network, also sometimes called just DMN, despite its name, it is not about being lazy or zoning out on the couch, although, sometimes a good zoning out session is good. The DMN is actually where creative ideas and imagination and problem solving happen. So think of your brain kind of like a house. When you're focused on something specific, like work or responding to emails or maybe doing your taxes, you're basically hanging out in the home office, using your executive function and checking off to-do lists, which is all great, right? But the DMN is kind of like maybe a backyard treehouse, or if you want to think of it this way, it's like your she shed or your man cave. It's where your mind gets to go to wander and to daydream and to come up with these brilliant ideas that seem to appear out of nowhere. So here's a way you can kind of find a real-life example of the DMN in action. Have you ever noticed how you get your best ideas in the shower, or maybe while you're driving somewhere that you drive every day, maybe your commute home from work and you can kind of zone out? Or maybe it's when you're falling asleep and your brain won't shut up. That is actually your default mode network kicking in. It thrives when you're not actively forcing yourself to think too hard. It's where creativity brews and connections form and those aha moments can happen. But here's the problem. When we're stressed out, the DMN basically gets shut down. So instead of free-flowing creative thought, your brain instead goes into this crisis mode and it prioritizes survival, not creativity. This is because stress activates the amygdala, which is the brain's alarm system. The amygdala is so great when you need it. Maybe you have to slam on the brakes to avoid hitting a squirrel in the road, but it's not great when you're trying to write a song or paint a masterpiece. And this makes sense spiritually, too. Fear and stress pull us out of trust, pull us out of joy, and into this gripping everything super tightly, I must control the outcome kind of mindset. But we were never meant to live that way. God tells us over and over in His Word, do not fear. And why does He tell us that? It's because when we're gripped by fear, we stop stepping into the full creative life He designed us for. But the good news is we can actually reverse this. So studies show that when we engage in play and creative expression, or even something as simple as laughing, it actually lowers the cortisol in our system, which is that stress hormone that keeps us in survival mode. At the same time, it activates your brain's reward system, releasing dopamine, which is basically your brain's way of saying, hey, that felt really good, let's do more of it. This is why kids are so much more creative than adults. They play all the time. And they're not worried about whether their finger painting project is good enough or if their Lego tower is productive enough. They just create stuff, right? And guess what? Their brains are literally forming new neural pathways as they do it. Again, neuroplasticity, the ability for the brain to rewire and grow, it's actually strongest when we engage in playful, expressive activities. And the best part about that is that we never actually lose that ability. It's just that we stop using it. And honestly, that just confirms what we already know in our hearts. Joy, creativity, and play are not luxuries. They're actually deeply ingrained in how we were made. And think about this. When Jesus says, "Let the little children come to me," did he only mean children as in kids? Or could it be possible that he also meant this childlike spirit in all of us, the part of us that dances and sings and imagines and lives, not just survives? So if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed, or maybe you feel like you've just forgotten how to be creative, this is your way back. Whether it's journaling, doodling, playing music, laughing until your stomach hurts, your brain and your soul need it. Remember, it is not a waste of time. It's really a reset button. The more you practice, the more your brain rewires itself to let joy, curiosity, and expression back in. So how do you learn to do this? How do you have joy for the sake of joy? Let's talk for a little bit about kids again. Have you ever watched a kid express themselves without fear before the world teaches them to judge themselves? I absolutely love watching one of my nieces when she's in character. And let me tell you, I honestly think we might have the next Meryl Streep on our hands because her imagination is so amazing. But she just becomes whatever character she decides she is in that moment. From a princess to a dog, doesn't matter, she goes all in. Many of us were this way too, although we might not exactly remember it. Because as time goes by, we feel judged or we get self-conscious. Now, some of this is good because let's be honest, a 40-something shouldn't be running around pretending to be a puppy. But have we possibly gone too far with removing our sense of play and imagination in our lives? And I know right now some of you might be thinking, well, this is just how I am. I'm just not creative. If that's you, first of all, I don't believe you. You might not be Picasso, but I bet you have something. Maybe it's a love for music or a knack for storytelling or a weirdly impressive ability to bake the perfect chocolate chip cookie. Creativity isn't just about art. It's about how we show up in the world. And guess what? We are heading back to our old friend here, neuroplasticity, to talk about how your brain is literally built to learn and change at any age, and science backs it up. So you've probably heard the phrase, and maybe you've even said it before, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, which is kind of rude to old dogs. And second, it's actually really wrong. Science has proven that your brain is always capable of learning, rewiring, and growing, no matter how old you are. This is called neuroplasticity, as I said, which is really just a fancy way of saying that your brain is flexible and can form new connections when you do something repeatedly. And honestly, this just confirms what we already know from Scripture. God designed us to be renewed and transformed. Romans 12:2 literally tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And guess what? Your brain physically does that when you engage in new activities. When you learn, when you create and express yourself, your mind isn't fixed. It's a work in progress. So that means that if you've been stuck in the I don't have time to be creative or I'm just not a creative person mode, you can rewire that belief and make space for joy again. And it's so great to do that because honestly, creativity can make time disappear. Have you ever been so lost in something you truly completely lost track of time? Like maybe you sat down to sketch or journal or play music, and all of a sudden you realized, wow, an hour has passed. What just happened? That is called flow state, and it's actually one of the best things you can do for your brain. It's when your mind is fully engaged, fully present, and you're completely in the zone. So when you're in flow, your brain actually lights up in the best way. Your stress hormones will drop, your creativity and problem-solving abilities will skyrocket, and get this, it will actually make you happier. Like neuroscience confirms that the things we do just for fun aren't a waste of time, they're actually essential for well-being. And biblically, it makes sense too. Psalm 16:11 says, "In his presence there is fullness of joy." Fullness. Not just like a tiny bit of joy if you've earned it and done enough hard work for the day. Not, there's joy for super spiritual people who have everything figured out. Just fullness of joy. Flow is like that. It's the brain's way of saying, hey, this is what you were designed to do. It's why worship feels so immersive. Why losing yourself in a creative moment can feel like freedom. It's the kind of joy that can't be measured by productivity. It just is. So, if you've been putting off creative expression because you think it's unimportant or frivolous or you're just too busy, let this be a reminder. Your brain needs it. Your soul needs it. You were created in the image of a creator, which means you were made to create in whatever way that looks for you. And if that looks like coloring outside the lines, then so be it. God didn't design you to live in black and white anyway. So up next, let's talk a little bit about how to practically make space for creativity in your life without adding to your already overwhelming to-do list. What we don't want to do is make the idea of finding time to be creative like some stressful addition to our lives, but it is important to bring creativity into our lives. So here are just a few ideas I had, to kind of get your own thoughts going on how to bring more creativity into your life. Number 1, you could go for a walk. And while you might not think this is creativity in action, going for a walk without the distraction of a specific goal can actually free your mind to dream. So if you can walk somewhere aesthetically pleasing, even better. Number 2, try listening to music. Sometimes just listening to a song you love can open your mind to other options for creativity. Number 3, try taking a class on a new skill. Try something new that you won't be able to just quickly monetize. Also, try something slow, like knitting, sewing, weaving, painting, crocheting. It will take time to learn, and it can open your mind creatively. And if you can't get out to an actual class, you can find tutorials on YouTube and learn something new that way. And number 4, try freeform journaling. Don't read what you're writing while you're writing it, but just freeform write whatever comes to your mind. You might write a poem, a list of thoughts, whatever, but just let that stream of consciousness flow. So, as we close out this episode today, I just want to remind you, expression is not about talent or impressing others. It's about joy, healing, and connection. So, I encourage you to do one expressive activity today without overthinking it. And when you do, find me on social media and let me know how it went. Until next time, friends, be well. Thank you for listening to this episode of Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll dive into more of life's big topics with a sense of humor and without toxic positivity. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and if you could leave a review, that helps the show reach more people and change more lives. Thank you so much.